So thank you everyone for joining this webinar. This is the 8th episode of Leadership Talks webinar by IIM Vishakapatnam. So currently, right now we have Mr. Saurabh Bajaj, who is head of marketing at Britannia Industries for the dairy product portfolio. Saurabh sir is alumni of IIM Indore, and he has 16 years of experience in business development, sales, marketing, and innovation portfolio. He has worked in Wipro Consumer Care. He has joined Mondelez. He also worked in Diageo and now in Britannia. So his past experience belongs to creating marketing strategies, working on advertising, and working on the innovation fronts for the various brands. He has worked with various brands creating enormous marketing strategies in terms of creating brand building. So right now he's associated with Britannia for dairy product, and he'll be talking about the topic of the practical marketer, where he'll be sharing about his practical experience dealing with the marketing concepts which you usually learn in MBA. So he'll be delivering an informative session for us. And Saurabh sir, thank you for joining this webinar. So over to you, sir. We can start.
Great. So let's start. So as we all enter marketing, right, we all wonder what's it all about. Finance guy deals with numbers, an operations guy gets stock at the right place. But what's marketing all about? Is it just liquor and guessing? Yeah, I guess it is to some extent. We just call it intuition and socializing. But let's move over to the next slide now on a few frameworks.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is a slide which might be quite, familiar to many of you guys in marketing, right? This is a standard marketing process. Marketing stands by understanding a lot of data about the marketplace, consumers' needs and wants, right? You go there, you do segmentation, targeting, and positioning, which is really about building your strategy. Then you go into the 4 Ps of marketing, which are so famous that you could, probably have that on a car bumper sticker. Yeah. Finally, you build profitable relationships and generate value. Yeah. Now this all seems pretty dry and seems to be a lot of text, right? But how does it work in the corporate boardrooms? Yeah. So just click again. Right. So in the corporate boardrooms, really the 4 things that we do, right, is we sort of figure out what our brand task is, right? And this is a big question, right? Believe you me, guys, because this is sort of open purse strings. This is what convinces the business on why should they be spending the big bucks that they spend behind marketing. Yeah. After you have aligned your brand task, you go out there, understand who your consumers are, what are they saying. And you have an insight into what is it that you want to do, right? You really brainstorm and figure out what you want to say, and that leads you to your marketing plan. Yeah, we summarize this again in the next slide. Okay, we can move to the next slide. As I mentioned in the first part, which is what is your brand task, right? This is a bunch of meetings. You meet with business stakeholders. You train everybody on kya hai, what is it that we're going to go out there and do. Yeah. The next step again, as I mentioned, go to the next. Now, this is the most of the marketeers obviously enjoy the most, right? Is about getting into the consumers' houses. Yeah, going to the consumers' houses, slicing and dicing. Shopper, purchaser, consumer are the different, right? But it's really about getting under the skin of the third step is about what you want to say. Yeah, click again. Right, and this is really a lot about brainstorming with your agency partners, right? Getting them on board, figuring it out that what's really going on, making all those fancy decks that you go back to top management with, right? The click again. Right, and you finally go out there and devise the marketing plan. So now let's get into these 4 steps in greater detail. Yeah, move to the next slide. Right. So what's a brand task, right? If I, ask a class full of students saying that what exactly is a brand task, right? The answers are several. So they could be, I want to retain existing consumers. I want to do customer relationship management. I want to make an ad. I want to grow market share, right? So there seem to be a whole flurry of things that we can do out there, right? But fundamentally, in my learning, the big questions are only two. And as we go to the next slide, we will decode them. Okay. So if I did a search on Google on key strategic choices, right, and if I picked out what Mr. Kotler had to say about it, right, and this complicated grid comes out, right? So there is a target competitor, challenger, frontal attack, flanking attack, and so on and so forth. Yeah. But like I said, it's not so complicated. Broadly, the questions are two. Yeah. Click again. The question is, do you want to grow the category? Yeah, and this is the question. This is the option that the marketeer loves and the CEO sweats about. Yeah, this is the one thing which most business heads don't want to do because it sounds very tough, very difficult, right? Because these answers could be: do you want people to fundamentally eat more chocolate? Do you want people to fundamentally buy more automobiles? Do you want people to buy more houses? Right? That sounds always very difficult, right? How are you going to change consumer behavior so fundamentally? And hence, grow category is really the big task, the task one, which is the first option. Yeah. Click again. Steal share. Now, this is a task which most business heads sort of veer towards. It sounds always so much simpler, but believe you me, it is a tougher one, right? And why? As we go to the next slide, we'll figure out. Yeah. So grow category. I think the one company that I really admire, right, and the one company which has done this whole task of growing category extremely well, right, has been Coca-Cola. And I was there in the bylanes of Bhubaneswar, Cuttack in 2003 when this campaign was launched, Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola. And not just I did my summer training with Coke, and not just did they launch this campaign on ATL. The fundamental shift that they made is that they started offering Coca-Cola at $5, right? And it was nothing short of earthquake, yeah, because it exploded the category, right? And I still remember those times where there was lines outside my distributor go down. The distributor had stopped servicing because the demand had just outpaced supply, right? There were retailers standing outside their doors, right, for miles because they just could not get their hands on enough Coke or Pepsi. Yeah. Now the interesting thing is when you do the grow category task, you don't benefit only yourself, you benefit the entire category. So when you launch a campaign which is this fundamental, a Pepsi grows, a Citra grows, a 7 Up, a Gold Spot at that time, every single cold drink major out there will grow because you have just fundamentally shifted a very fundamental belief structure of the consumer. When you said Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola, what did you mean? You meant that now when you want to quench your thirst, instead of buying a buttermilk, instead of buying a nariyal pani, instead of buying a juice, you can buy a Coke because as simple as that. And before this campaign, arguably, a cold drink was a foreign product by a multinational based in US. I don't really know what to do with it. It is quite expensive. It starts at maybe $10, $15, and it can be had on few occasions, maybe with Western food. But Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola fundamentally replaced the buttermilk, yeah, which is why it was such a massive success. Okay, go to the next, click again. A company which I've been a part of, Mondelez, right, has done the other task extremely well. Yeah, and this is of stealing share from mithai or really growing the chocolate category by getting consumers from the mithai sector. Yeah, and they've been doing this for the last 20, 30 years, maybe, right? But how powerful is this strategy? So I joined Cadbury's in 2005. I joined an 800 crore company. When I exited Cadbury's in 2012, I exited a 6,000 crore company. The company grew 8 times in 8 years, right? And why? Why did all that happen? Very simple. They said there is a $1 billion market out there, which is mithai. I just need to tell the consumer every single thing that you do with mithai, right? Whether it is that meetha which you have in the morning before you go to an exam, whether it is a mithai box that you use for celebrating a promotion, whether it is just being happy because you got your salary, every single thing that you can do with mithai, you can do with chocolates, right? Very massive, very fundamental, very simple, right? And that was the whole kuch meeta ho jaye, right? Let's go to just click again. So I'm also a fan of a McDonald's and of a Domino's, right? Of what they have done to the QSR segment, right? Arguably, the cheese category in this country has been created by Domino's and not by Amul, or maybe not even by Britannia. Why? Because they fundamentally told the consumer, the same experience that you have when you go out there and have a dal makhani and a couple of tandoori rotis. Yeah, for the same price you can get this very fancy American dish, right, for 99 bucks. And really, while they did not use communication as much, the simple task of making that category relevant was done through pricing, was done through variants, which were things like tandoori chicken and what have you. Yeah, you can click again. Now, shampoos and sachets, right? This is again a very interesting story. Arguably, the task for exploding the shampoo category in this country was not done by Hindustan Lever. It was done by Kevin Care. It was done by Chick Shampoo, right? And as the stories go, the brand manager in Sunsilk, right, looked at the Nielsen data and said, "Oh my God, what has happened? A Chick shampoo has become larger than all our shampoo brands put together." Because this whole idea of getting a shampoo at a 1 rupee price point fundamentally exploded the relevance of shampoos, right? And all consumers which were using maybe soaps, then they were using shikakai to wash their hair, they suddenly realized that, oh my God, there's something called shampoos is available at $1 and it does the job so much better. Yeah, so click again. So the whole grow category task, right? This is a very meaningful task for marketeers. It builds relevance for the category. Yeah, and understand this is really, really fundamental. When brands do the marketing task, they don't necessarily grow just themselves. They grow the category because brands are just surrogates of the category, right? Pepsi, when a Delhiite asks for a Pepsi, he means any cold drink because Pepsi is the market leader there, right? And the grow category task builds relevance for the category as a whole, right? It finds consumers from outside the category, not from within the category. It is high investment and is typically done by the market leader, because when the category grows, the market leader gets the highest share of that business. Yeah. There's another task which you have equally compelling examples, and that other task is called the steal share. Yeah. If we just click on the slide again. Yeah, steal share, right? Now there are in again very, very fascinating examples of people who have really done the steal share task very well, right? And when I was just researching the QSR segment recently, I realized that a Burger King has become larger than a McDonald's, or at least what a McDonald's was a few years back. And how did they do that? They really realized that a McDonald's has repositioned the vada pav, and they said that our burgers are available at 20, right? And then Burger King brought back the delight into this category, and they said, why are you having this plain vanilla burger at 20, 25, 30 bucks? Go out there and have the real burger, have the real maybe American experience, right? And hence I think this whole relying on the Whopper, right, which makes Burger King such an attractive proposition in the QSR segment today, right? And I think Burger King has done the steal share task really well. Yeah, click again. OnePlus. Again, 5-7 years back, I was surprised when I just walked down my office corridor and I realized that every single brand manager sitting out there was using an iPhone. And then when I did the same experiment a few months back, I realized that today everybody is using a OnePlus. Why is that? What happened, right? What is it that made OnePlus just so massive in this country? And do you see any ads of OnePlus? Yeah, you see a few, but is that the reason why you're buying it? No. It's a very, very fundamental product promise. You have the iPhone X experience at 35,000 bucks. They have just fundamentally disrupted the kind of a value that a smartphone is supposed to give you. Yeah, that's a steal share task, and they've done that really, really well. Yeah, click again. Another example for me in the steel share segment where somebody has done this extremely well, I think, is Fog. Right? You don't see those fundamental ads of Fog which talk about the allure. We remember all those brilliant ads of Axe that we saw all while growing up, right? And Axe did a great job of growing category. They made deodorants relevant. But Fog, it just took the market everybody away from everybody else, right? How did they do that? A very fundamental disruption in the product value equation, right? Deodorants were gas, perfumes are liquid. Deodorant sold at 200 bucks, perfume sold at 2000. So they said, why don't we just sell a perfume and call it a deodorant? And we can sell that at 500, 200, 300, why not? Right? And the whole promise of liquid, not gas, is what Fog did. A very superior product promise, and that's all they required. Just communicate the product benefit. You took the market away from anybody else who was trying to explain people why do you use deodorants in the first place. Yeah. Click again. Bingo is a recent example. Again, they used product superiority. They said, we cannot become maybe as aspirational as a Lay's. We don't have to. We don't have to spend all that money, right? We don't have to tell people why should you have chips. They probably already know, right? But I can take the product experiences from Indian ethnic snacks, right? Like your khakras and your matris. Give that in the same avatar, and voila, I take away a lot of share. Right, and that's what Bingo did. That's what probably Kurkure did, right? Though Kurkure, I would argue and say, did it from the other namkeens. Bingo probably did it closer to home. Yeah. So click again. So the second task, like I said, the big second task is talk to existing category users, build a very differentiated benefit. This is the challenger's brand strategy. It is much less expensive. It can be very, very successful as well, right? But really making this first choice is what you need to do before embarking onto your marketing plan, and really aligning this, saying that what is it that I'm going to do? Am I a challenger in this board game? Am I a market leader? Am I trying to grow the category which others will also then benefit of me? Or am I trying to just steal share? And steal share then has a big role to play in terms of product experiences, the product benefit, right? But both tasks are equally exciting for a marketer. Okay, let's click again. Yeah. So one of the brands, like I mentioned, which I've worked with is Dairy Milk, right? And I think they've done this whole grow category task so beautifully, not just in terms of advertising, but product experiences, innovations, something at the shopper. I think they've done it all, right? And they just stuck very clearly onto their grow category strategy, right? So what are these examples that I'm sharing here, right? I think one thing which Cadbury did very well is your payday, right? Which is when they fundamentally attacked mithai in terms of celebrating a special occasion, right? And that occasion was as simple as getting your salary. Yeah. Cadbury celebrations, I see in many ways as an extension of Dairy Milk, right? And really, Diwali and Rakhi are two occasions that they have owned, right? And they have continued to replace the mithai in core festival occasions. Yeah. Shubharam, right, was their last campaign, right, where they celebrated a housewife wearing jeans for the first time, a start of a new friendship, and there are so many different cuts to it, right? But again, it is all about saying that when you start something new, you do it with a box of mithai. Let's do that with Dairy Milk. Yeah. And again, the recent job of trying to get Dairy Milk inside houses as a home treat, yeah, which is something which takes it away from an impulse into a grocery behavior, right? I think is what they're doing now. But fundamentally, the whole task remains grow the category, build in new behaviors that were not there in the past, build it through advertising, build it through activation, build it through innovations, but just sort of stick to it and make chocolates more relevant for you. Yeah, moving on. You can move to the next slide. Yeah. Now we go on to the whole point of understanding the consumer. Now, this question always seems like a red herring, right? Understand the consumer, but aren't we talking to anybody? Like, is there somebody that we are not talking to? Who doesn't buy chocolates? Who doesn't drink? Who doesn't drive cars, right? So the consumer can be anybody, right? But what do we mean by understand the consumer? So I think this whole section is really about finding the most valuable consumer, the one consumer that you will shift more than others, the bullseye consumer, that consumer or that need state, right, or that occasion in that in every consumer's life, which is where you want to pivot your brand, right? And in many companies, this whole finding a consumer is used by different words, right? Some companies call it target group, other call it the bullseye consumer. Some people call it the MVP, the most valuable purchaser. A few other companies like a Diageo calls it the occasion, right, rather than the consumer, right? But really, the segment now is on how do you decode the consumer. Yeah, next slide. Okay, now this is my most favorite part of marketing. I think if there is one thing which I've taken back from my campus days, it is STP, yeah, segmentation, targeting, positioning, and hence I've just left it as is, right? I think this is really simple. This is something which guides any marketing case study that you ever work on, right? So what are these three things? Next slide. Yeah, segmentation. Okay. Now, I still remember the lecture when I was sitting in the class in which segmentation was being discussed. And I was like, why doesn't the professor stop? Like he's droning on and on. I mean, I get it. There is geographical segmentation, there is demographic segmentation, there is psycho, graphic segmentation. And I was like, I don't even get half these words for heaven's sake, right? But what segmentation basically means is that you can cut the consumer in various ways, right? You can cut it by region, right? For me, in my experience with milkshakes, I found it really interesting that Tamil Nadu behaves very differently from the rest of the country, because Tamil Nadu is one place which is milk deficient, and they use milkshakes almost as a milk substitute, and hence the geographical segmentation is often interesting. Yeah. Then there is demographic segmentation. Yeah, demographic segmentation is again very exciting because Gems is a brand for children. At least the consumption comes from children. 5 Star is a brand for youth, right? Or at least a large part of that consumption comes from youth. And Dairy Milk is a brand for adults, right? Now, is that holistically true? No, of course not. Everybody has all of those products. But who is my bullseye? Where is that particular product offering or that subcategory most relevant? Yeah, that's where demographic segmentation comes from. A psychographic segmentation is something which I am a fan of, right? And this is what I learned very deeply in Diageo, and I will take this through to you in several slides, right? But really, a psychographic segmentation says, I'm talking to everybody. I'm just talking to a different attitude, right? And that attitude leads to different occasions, right? And hence I feel this is probably the most complicated but the most fun kind of segmentation, and we'll talk about it, right? And then there is behavioral segmentation, which also has a link to psychographic segmentation, right? A psychographic segmentation is more about lifestyle, personality, values. A behavioral segmentation is more about occasions, benefits, quantity, right? A behavioral segmentation or a benefits linked segmentation is something which is very valuable in automobiles, right? Where it is more about the price points, right? And about the benefits and the functions. Yeah. But click again. Yeah, need scope. Yeah, need scope is something which I want to talk about because I felt this is a very fascinating way of segmentation that we did in Diageo. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so click again. Yeah, so like I said, a consumer portrait is what finally emerges where you make all the cuts of demographic, occasion, behavior. Yeah, click again. But need scope helps you understand attitude, right? And this is a tool which is sold by TNS Kantar, right? If you click again. Yeah. So a segmentation grid, which is psychographic, right, or occasion linked, right, typically uses these two axes, right? The first axis is the use is social versus personal. So are we getting into those need states where the occasions are more social in nature, or are they more personal in nature? Yeah. And then they again cut the consumer attitude into extrovert and introvert. Yeah. And click again. Yeah, this is what emerges, right? And this in some ways is something which I almost found magical, right? Because it explains so much. It's incredible, right? So what the need scope tool does, right? It cuts the consumer's mind state, right, into various attitudes, right? So if you start from the social side, right, it's about affiliative, approachable, friendly. Yeah. Then as you move to carefree, it is a little more spontaneous, fun loving, right? If you come downwards, it's about caring. Yeah. And now you see how these things map, right? If you are an extrovert in a social space, you're likely to be carefree. If you're an introvert in a social space, you're likely to have a caring moment, right? If you are an extrovert in a personal space, you're likely to be independent, right? Which is about bold, dynamic, right? If you are an introvert in a personal space, you're likely to be competent, right? Focused, competent, controlled, right? Now, again, this seems like a lot of words and jargon, but how do you exactly use this, right? And this is something which I personally found extremely fascinating. Yeah. Click again. Right. Now, figuring out what we want to say. So you got a consumer now, right? You found your consumer, you found your occasion, right? You figured out that I want to talk to maybe a 12 to 14-year-old in his playing occasion, right? So when that kid is playing, what exactly are we pitching to him? How do you really decode what is it that you want to say? Yeah. And that's what I'm going to now cover in the next part of the segment. Okay. Click again. Yeah, and that's where positioning comes in. Okay, click again. Right. Now again, positioning can be as dry as segmentation, right? Category based, consumer based, competitor based, price, attribute, prestige. लेकिन भाई करना क्या है? What do I do with this, right? How can I make positioning simple, right? And if you click again, yeah, just click. So what I do with my team, with my brand managers, I tell them, guys, just go out there and find me a 2x2 grid. Any 2x2 grid, you decide with what goes on those axes. Just lay the brands out and you will have a lot of clarity on how you are different from others, right? How does this 2x2 grid work, right? Looks very simple. You pick up any of the categories on the left. So you pick up your prestige category, consumer, competitor, whatever it might be, place it out there, right? Price, easiest, most expensive, less expensive, right? Less convenient, more convenient, right? Competitor, right? Prestige. So what I again find very interesting about prestige as a segmentation variable, right, is when I look at vodka, right? Now, vodka, guys, is a colorless, tasteless, odorless fluid, right? And when we used to sell Smirnoff, our demonstration in the market used to be just sprinkle some of it on your hand, rub it, and it's gone. Yeah. Frankly, there is precious little difference between an alcohol and a hand sanitizer. But I must warn you, you can use an alcohol for sanitizing your hands. Don't do the reverse. Yeah. But still, in something like a vodka, you can charge 1,200 bucks a bottle. You can charge 2,500. You can charge 4,000. You can charge 8,000. Right. And what is the difference? What is the difference between a Smirnoff versus an absolute versus a Grey Goose? What's the real difference out there? The difference is only prestige associated with the brand, nothing more, nothing less, right? You can put every chemist out there, he will struggle to find out the difference in the recipe or in the formula, right? And okay, let's move on. Let me demonstrate what this 2x2 grid does. Yeah, click again. Yeah. So yeah, click again. So I love to make the statement that all of the world is a 2x2 grid. Any damn category, any damn segmentation task, right? You use a 2x2 grid, you will open up a world of opportunities, right? Now, why is this so powerful? Why is this 2x2 grid so powerful? Now, if I was doing a positioning work for Cadbury Dairy Milk, right, and I put on this 2x2 grid, right, very simply, low price, high quality, low quality. Now, I will not say an M&M's is low quality, but maybe it is then the composition of chocolate, right? A green blacks is highest cocoa content. A dairy milk has got slightly lesser. An M&Ms or a Kit Kat, not only do they have less cocoa, they also have wafer and sugar, right? And hence that's really the variable, right? Now, what does this do for Cadbury Dairy Milk? What does this open up? Yeah, click again. Yeah, it can open up an opportunity like shorts and says that there are a lot of consumers out there wanting to have a Cadbury Dairy Milk, right, in a less indulgent or a poppable occasion. So you launch Cadbury Dairy Milk shorts, which is nothing but a dairy milk with a sugar shell. Yeah, click again. A Crispello. A Crispello is Cadbury Dairy Milk taking on Kit Kat by its chocolate equity, right? What does a Crispello say? It says, you want to have a Kit Kat? Fine, I've got wafer for you. You want to have something which has probably got higher chocolate equity? Yeah, I've got a Cadbury Dairy Milk Crispello. Yeah. Okay, click again. You want to take on a Ferrero Rocher, right? You can get into gifting. That's another extension of Cadbury Dairy Milk, simply opened up by the 2x2 grid. Yeah, click again. Go upwards to a silk and say that, you know what, you got a lint or a galaxy coming in. Yeah, make it higher quality, decrease the micron size, make the chocolate finer. Yeah, click again. And then you can have a Bonville. Now, a Bonville was priced very differently, right? And if you were to check some archives, you'll realize that Bonville almost 15 years back was a very similar product under the Dairy Milk fold. But when we launched Bonville, we realized that we need to let it go of the Dairy Milk equity, and hence it became just Cadbury Bonville, not Cadbury Dairy Milk, right? But the idea started from the fact that you have a green and blacks out there, you have this emerging market, and really where all does Cadbury extend to? Yeah, okay, click again. So a positioning, when you've got a broad point of view on how you stack up next to your competitors, right? Now it's the time to put your pen to paper. You start making your brand ladder. Okay, click again. Yeah, so this is the brand ladder for a Coca-Cola, right? Now, somebody once jokingly said that, you know, if we logically kept extending every brand, every single brand will want to go out there and deliver world peace, right? But is that what we marketeers do? Yeah, we should definitely avoid that, right? But very simply, what does a brand ladder do? Yeah, click again. So what a brand ladder does, very simply, it helps you ask yourself, what am I and why should the consumer buy me? This journey from the functional to the emotional is what a brand ladder helps you uncover, right? So very meticulously it asks you, what are your attributes, right? So Coca-Cola is sugar, water, yeah, some caffeine maybe, right? So functional benefit. Okay, the sugar goes in, gives me an high, it's cold, it makes me feel refreshed. Okay, emotional benefit. What goes up further? It makes me feel happy. Yeah, it makes me feel more sociable, right? So what am I? I'm sugar water with some aeration. Why should you buy me? Because it gives you that happy moment, right? America's favorite moment, the pause. Yeah, and that's really what a brand ladder does. As marketeers, then we bring alive the brand ladder in the form of concept cards. Yeah, go to the next slide. So in a concept card, again, the two things that you need to debate endlessly about is your functional benefit and your emotional benefits. Yeah, click again. Okay, so a brand ladder eventually then translates into your concept card, right, which is a very tight articulation of what you are really giving to the consumer. And believe you me, if you were to take an idea of how many hours marketeers spent on making concept cards versus anything else, I think the concept cards will win, you know, any day, because 60-70% of our life probably goes in making these sharp concept cards, right? And concept cards are really, really important because they really help thread this entire journey of what am I and why should you buy me? Yeah. Concept cards start in reverse. They start with why should you buy me? It starts with the insight. It starts with what's really important for the consumer, right? So for the consumer, is it important that I feel guilty whenever I have a cookie, right? So you can consider craze cookies because they're great tasting, yet they're guilt free, right? Led down to what am I? it's got XYZ amount of fat, sugar, and so on and so forth, which is called the reason to believe, right? And really polishing your hand and making concept cards is the biggest service that any marketer will do himself. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Yeah. Now, while there are a lot of positionings out there, one of the things which I wanted to share, and I realize we're running out of time, right, is that typically the only positions work are the only ones that your competition can't own. Yeah. And this one line summary is a summary of all the readings of Al Rice and I've done. Yeah. Which is really fascinating. That's really guides my work when I work in my offices. Yeah. Click again. So if I have a Coca-Cola, which says, yeah, click again. So if I have a Coca-Cola, right, which talks about it's the real thing, right? And how do you beat that, right? How do you beat the real thing, right? A Pepsi then takes on the only positioning that Coke can't own, right? That I'm the choice of the new generation. Haha, I pulled one fast one over you, didn't I? Right? And when these positionings are sharp and they are rooted in the one thing that your competition can't own, right? You have the right to be the number two, right? And as the consumers shift and how as attitudes shift, right, you can eventually even deposition your competition, right? But really this whole thing, and if you study any market, any category out there, you will typically find the market leader has 60% share, right? So Cadbury has a 65% share, Amul cheese has 65% share, right? Johnny Walker has 60% share, right? And then the second competition has got a 30% share, right? So Britannia cheese has got a 25% share, right? Nestle has got 25% share, right? Because as long as the positionings are rooted in polar opposites, you have the right to take at least the number two position, if not the number one. Yeah. Click again. So if Domino's talks about delivery, right? And we all have finite money out there. A Pizza Hut does the only thing it can. It does not talk about delivery. It talks about the opposite of delivery. It talks about the opposite of convenience. Yeah, click again. So what Pizza Hut talks about, it talks about king size meals. It talks about the fact that if you want to really have the pizza experience, you can have king. And that's what they talk about. And what is really exciting, Domino's gets bulk of its business on the thin crust pizza, and Pizza Hut does not have thin crust pizza on their menu because they do not want you to feel that you are replacing Domino's, right? It's the polar opposite. Yeah. Yeah, click again. So another example of brands, right, where you pick up a positioning which is the antithesis of the owner, right? Lux is perhaps the brand that we most know in soap, right? In my time at Wipro Consumer, what I realized, and I found this fascinating, is that all soaps are 99% exactly the same product. There is very, very little difference. And the difference can often be trace amount. It's difference only from a regulatory reason. Like it's about 0.2% of some little bit of an ingredient, right? So if Lux is the market leader, what is the positioning you take, right? What is the second most selling brand? Yeah, click again. It will either be a Lifebuoy or it will be a Dettol. And why is that? Because the only thing that you can say if Lux is saying Filmi Sitaron ka sabun, right, is that I clean better, right? And why can Dettol say that, right? What gives it the right? The fact that they have an antiseptic in their fold, right? And this is the correlation with the antiseptic rather than any further advertising that Dettol soap would be doing, right? Which makes them so powerful, right? Okay, moving on. Yeah, as we move to the next slide, right? Now we come up across to the marketing plan, right? So we have not talked about who is the consumer. We talked about positionings that work. Now let's get down to the fun stuff, right? The execution. Okay, let's click again, right? Now, as we see in a Kotler, after you got your positioning, You essentially come down to the 4 P's of marketing: the product, price, place, yeah, promotion. Yeah, guys, you have clicked, right? Because I think there's a lag at my end. And these 4 P's of marketing really lead to the 4 pieces of marketing that we do. Yeah, click again. So it leads to advertising, it leads to consumer engagement, right? It leads to shopper marketing. Yeah, and click again. Of course, it leads to innovation. Yeah, no, innovation obviously is linked to product. Shopper marketing is linked to place, right? Your advertising and engagement is both linked to promotion, really. But the 4 P's of marketing really convert into these 4 tasks, right? And what do we do with them? Click again. So in advertising, right? And advertising is of course the most glamorous part of marketing, right? Yeah. In advertising, the best ads are those which are most singular in their message, right? Which simply shift the consumer from what does she currently think about your product to what do you want her to believe about that brand, right? And trust me, advertising is not for showing that, by the way, I also have a 5 rupees chocolate and a 10 rupees and a 20 rupees. It's not about placing 3 more brands inside. It's not about making a larger logo. It is not about saying that, it is available in pawn shops and kiranas, which are all the pressures that a marketeer faces from the rest of the guys in his function, right? But really, advertising that works is very, very single minded. Yeah, click again. Advertising and winning themes and campaigns really say only one thing, very simply. The one thing which they say is, what is the one thing you want them to say that they believe you? Yeah, okay. Click again. A few examples of some breakthrough advertising. Yeah, click again. I would say, arguably in current day times, the most famous ad, which has probably done its best job, is the Cadbury Dairy Milk Silk ad, right? If you ask somebody to define ad mein kya dekha bhai, right? All he will say is that chocolate melts, and unbelievably, that's all that that ad needs to say. It's a premium chocolates. It's expensive. It has got chocolates with a smaller micron size. But do you find all of that in the ad? No, you don't need it. All you need to say is this chocolate melts, right? And if the chocolate melts, if that's all the consumer takes out, you have the claim of being the softest, creamiest chocolate in the market. Yeah, okay, click again. Axe ad I talked about originally, right? All those beautiful advertising of Axe, all they said is don't worry about body odor with Axe. That's it. That's all they said. You can do it as a chocolate man, you can do it through 1,000 different creatives. Yeah, click again. And Fevicol, right? I think Fevicol is one iconic brand, and it's done the best homegrown pieces of work, right? And this whole thing of a large number of people piled up, right, is interesting. Just do a Fevicol click on your Google, and 1,000 images of the same piece will come up, right? This is something which has become so viral because it is just so intuitive, right? Fevicol is the best adhesive. It sticks all those people to the truck, right? And that's really what advertising is about. Yeah, click again. Now, consumer engagement is the polar opposite of advertising, right? If advertising is about the one thing you want to say, consumer engagement, and that's where really digital plays a large role, right? Consumer engagement is about what does the consumer want to talk about and how can you participate. What is the simplest way for you to participate in the consumer's conversation, right? And I think there's a large amount of examples of brands which have tried to do consumer engagement in the times of coronavirus, right? You had a bunch of brands talking about spreading awareness about hand wash, right? Then you had a bunch of brands talking about, how do you celebrate your time at home, right? You had another set of brands talking about things to do at home. How do you do time pass at home? Right. And finally, you had a lot of brands talking about appreciation and gratitude for all those people who are going out there. Right. Are all these messages about the brand? Not really. Right. Some of them will have an oblique reference to their brand values, but largely they are about participating in the conversation that's really going on out there. Yeah. Next slide again. Shopper marketing. Yeah. So what's shopper marketing all about, right? Shopper marketing is a very, very wide field, but I just wanted to talk about just 3 small examples, which I find exciting. Click again. So one, I think Cadbury has done this extremely well, right? This is about helping the shopper by collaborating with the retailer in organizing their layout, right? So they just use their messaging to talk about, where is the gifting aisle, where is the self-indulgence aisle, where is the home stocking aisle, right? And they'll allow all other brands to sit in there, but category management typically helps the market leader, right? Because it just helps the shopper shop better. Okay. So that's one way of doing shopper marketing. Click again. Another way of doing shopper marketing is by leveraging topicality. I think the one time when we see the best marketing tools in the shopper market is during Diwali and Rakhi, right? Where you leverage topicality. Yeah. Click again. Yeah, but I think the most fascinating example of shopper marketing, right, I think is Apple, how they bring alive the brand's world, or the world that the brand wants to create through their stores, right? I think, and I just think their work is extremely brilliant. Yeah. Okay, click again. Okay, innovation, right? What does innovation do for the brand? How is that a task, right? And innovation is something which Dairy Milk has done very successfully by getting into new occasions for the consumer, right? The home stocking occasion, the shorts, yeah, silk, gifting. I've talked about these in the past, right? These expand the brand's core, right? It makes the brand larger in the consumer's mind and his life, because now it is relevant in a lot of other occasions. Yeah, click again. But one topic that I am quite passionate about when it comes to innovation, right, is about what do all winning innovations have in common. Yeah, and this is interesting. This really comes through my 10 years at Cadbury's and just viewing what worked, what didn't work, and trying to build a hypothesis on why that was so. Yeah, oftentimes the innovation brief, right, which comes in the first task, right, the business task tends to be, I want to steal market share from my competition. Now, when you want to steal market share from your competition, you can do two things, right? Either you try to become the competition, or you try to become more of yourself, right? And I feel the simple one line difference between innovations that work and innovations that don't work, right, is who does the innovation talk to? Does the innovation talk to your core user, and does it increase appeal among your core users? Or does your innovation talk to your fringe user, or does it talk to the competition users? Whenever you talk to the competition users, in my opinion, you fail. Because if the competition wants to, if the consumer wants to have the competition, they will have the competition. They won't have you. Yeah. But I just want to demonstrate this theory with a few examples. Yeah. Click again. So Gems, right? This is a brand which I worked on. This is the first brand which I was a brand manager of. Yeah, click again. And when I sort of came in, right, this Kinder Joy was attacking us, and a Gems ball is what we launched. Yeah, it really worked well for the brand. It made the brand what more than what it is. Gems used to sell for $5 or 10 or 15, right? It gave a really fun, playable experience. Could command a premium to all the way to 30. I think it made the brand bigger. Yeah, click again. An example of an innovation which didn't work on Gems is something which none of you would have heard about, right? It's called Fruity Gems, right? And when I took on the job as a brand manager, my first task was to explain why was this innovation such a failure. It was done before I came in, but just before, right? And really my decoding onto this was exciting for me was the fact that when we launched Fruity Gems, right, the insight was Gems plays in the space of playing, which is where the consumer also buys sugar boiled candy. And in sugar boiled candy, what he likes is fruity flavors. So we launched a Gems with a white chocolate base with sweet and sour flavors. It bombed. It just didn't work at all. And it bombed multiple times, right? Because we again tried to relaunch it. Why didn't it work, right? Why it didn't work is because the real reason for having sugar boiled candy is not the fruity flavors. It's because the consumer is because the child, when he's running on a field, his mouth becomes dry. He wants a sugar boiled candy which enhances the saliva, right? While chocolates is had sitting at home in front of a TV in a safe place where your hands are not dirty, right? And that's why a Gems plays in the in home TV watching occasion, and sugar boiled candy works in the playing occasion. So just by launching fruity flavors, I cannot replace a sugar pearl candy. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah, let's go to the next example. Yeah, click again. Perk. This is what Perk used to look like. I'm sure you guys have never seen Perk like this, but this is what Perk used to look like in the heydays when a Preeti Zinta was a brand ambassador. Right? It was a lot more chocolatey. It was getting its socks beaten off by Munch. Right? Munch was just ramming it left, right, center. Okay, click again. So we tried to and just click once more. So we tried to take on Munch in two ways. Yeah, we tried. This is the second thing that we tried. Just click once more. The first thing we tried was something called Ulta Perk, right? Where we put the wafer outside and chocolate inside, right? And Ulta Perk was a humongous failure, right? Because the Perk consumer simply wanted wafer, right? Wanted more wafer. He did not want a very different eat, and that's what Ulta Perk was, right? A regular Perk, this is the renovation of Perk, really just made Perk more wafery. So why do you buy a Perk instead of a Cadbury Dairy Milk? Because you want to have wafer. So we just give you more wafer. Yeah, and that really was the runaway success. Okay, click again. And Eclairs, right? Eclairs has again been one of those iconic brands of Cadbury's, right? The proposition of Eclairs has always been Meetha Bomb, and you must go online and check the Meetha Bomb advertising. It's really beautiful, right? What is at the core of the brand of Eclairs? It's the gush of chocolate when you bite into it, right? Now there are again two innovations which is done on Eclairs. Click again. Yeah, the first innovation which was done more recently is when you had a 2 rupees eclairs, which was even more luxurious, even more of a chocolate burst. It did really well for us. Yeah, click again. This is a colossal failure. Why? Again, we wanted to become the competition. We said that our competition of eclairs is Alpenliebe. Why can't we launch an eclairs crunch, which is an Alpenliebe? Yeah, it just has some more chocolate inside. But remember, when you innovate, the first guys who consume you are your core users. Your competition users are the last guy to consume you. You don't get trial, right? And it alienates your own core users, right? And hence, the simple wisdom of innovation which I have is when you innovate, be more of what you are. Don't try to become the competition. Yeah, click again. So this brings me to the end of the session. Yeah, and we will open up for questions in a couple of minutes. Yeah, but just to summarize all that I've told you so far. Yeah, so the two key tasks which marketeers must choose for the brands is: do they want to grow the category, or are they focusing on stealing market share? Second, there are several types of segmentation. The most simplest is by making age cuts. Another one which is really interesting is attitudinal, which is need scope. Yeah. A simple 2x2 grid is a powerful way of mapping out the market and evaluating opportunities for your brand. A brand ladder helps you uncover how to take the consumer from what the brand is to what it can do for you. The most powerful positionings is those which emerge from the only thing that your competition cannot own. Yeah. In making advertising, it's important to break down your communication to one simple message and stick to it. Just make that one message large, right? Finally, innovation often works when you extend the brand core rather than trying to become the competition. Yeah. So this is like a long summary of all the broad learnings that I've had, right, in what FMCG marketing is really all about. Yeah. So that's about it from my end from this session. Yeah, and we can now open it up to questions.
Yes, sir. So we have got a couple of questions. So I'll start getting it one by one. So we have one question.
Sure.
So Munir has asked, Coke, Dairy Milk, and Domino's, they are the brands which have started in grow category. So here they have grown the category.
Yeah. Right.
But there might be some other brands who have tried getting into the grow brand, but has there been a failure seen in this kind of brands? If you can recollect any brand who have entered in the grow category but might have failed to capture making the brand.
Sure. So I'll tell you the challenge with the whole grow category task and grow brand, right? Most business people believe that marketeers are out there to grow their brands, right? And hence the often the question asked is, when you're playing this ad, is your competition growing or are you growing, right? And really, this piece of understanding is very important for marketeers to communicate to other people that as advertising does not grow a brand only, it grows categories. It brings in new consumers, right, and makes that category relevant, right? There is not so when a Cadbury Dairy Milk says "Kuch meetha ho jaye," you might as well buy a Kit Kat, right? And hence there is often not a very direct correlation between a particular brand's business growth and advertising. Yeah. Now, why do brands fail to achieve the grow category task, right? And what's the sort of pitfalls and challenges? I think the pitfalls and challenges is really in terms of resources, right? I think a lot of brands which have come out in the past, and often you find startups doing that, right? Where they try to grow the category by disproportionately burning money on advertising, right? When they disproportionately burn the money on advertising, right, it weakens their entire business, right? Now, I will not say paperboat is a very large success. I think it's a brand that many of us use and love, right? But they try grow themselves and the category through this whole promise of a really natural drink, right? But after spending in a lot of resources, not just in terms of advertising but also in terms of sales force, they realized that they were not able to grow beyond a certain level or match their ambitions, right? Another brand in the market which is I think has been trying to do this is 2Yum. Yeah, 2Yum, which has got Virat Kohli, right? They are trying to do this whole task of growing the category of healthy products, healthy chips, and they spend a lot of money out there trying to do it, right? Personally, my belief is that they have overextended themselves. They have tried too damn hard to grow the category of healthy chips. Had they simply focused on stealing share from a Lay's by a lot more of product and packaging innovation and not so much of communication, I think they might have grown a little slowly, but they might have just made a more efficient PNL. And as a marketer, I always believe that your task is not just to grow your brand; you are really an entrepreneur which guides the business strategy. And hence, the choice of the two tasks comes in really efficiently deploying and making a profitable PNL.
So we have one more question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Go on.
So Sandeep has asked, where does Maggie stand in the whether it stand in the grow category or stand in the skill category, like from the inception of
Skillshare.
the category? Okay, skill share.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think Maggie is again a fabulous brand. I think it's a brand that most of us have grown up eating. We really love this brand, right? So why did Maggie succeed so well, right? Why did it become so large, right? Now, I personally believe through the work which I've done in studying some of these brands, right? Maggie learned something very simple, right? What they learned is Indians are uncomfortable with instant food, right? We are not a country which buys canned chicken, canned meat like the way the US does, right? We don't eat out as much. We don't like to order from outside. Why is that? Right? Because we are in a tropical country, things go bad very easily, right? We feel that stuff which is brought from outside cannot be as healthy as ghar ka khana, right? And just the simple act of heating the Maggie, and believe you me, it would have been possible for Maggie to make a formulation where you would not have had to put it in hot water and heat it, right? And a lot of those examples are already there in Southeast Asia, right? There are a lot of examples of noodle brands which are had cold, right? But they're very simple inside of saying that this is an instant food. Mom can make it very easily, लेकिन there is a mother's touch. हाथ लगाया है, गरम किया है, गरम पानी में डाला है, is what allowed a Maggie to take business from all other food choices. And hence they really grew the category of instant food. It is Maggie's advertising and it is Maggie which grew pastas, which grew all the other subcategories which have come after. Because the fundamental task of growing the category of instant foods, I think, has been done most successfully by Maggie in this country.
Yes, sir. So we have one more question from Sagar. So now we have talked about the marketing plan where shopping category is also been taken into consideration. Now in the
Mhm.
FMCG space, there is one thing direct to consumer, which is like e-commerce, and the other thing is the local retail experience. So now considering the shopping experience is part of the marketing plan, and there has been a disruption in the retail space. So how can the brands can manage coming D2C into the consideration with e-commerce? So should there be a tweak in the marketing plan, or how do we see this?
Right. So, like I mentioned, I see marketeers are as entrepreneurs which guide company strategy. Yeah, and hence a marketeer thinks not just about the retail or the consumer or the brand experience. I think there are no filters out there. A marketeer holds the PNL and makes the business profitable. Yeah. Now, direct to consumer space. Right? I think this is a very exciting topic, and a lot of people out there are talking about it. Right now, understand India is a country of 1.3 billion people. Yeah, and the challenges of going D2C, right, is really the logistics and the supply chain, right? And hence, at each level, how do you make money? How do you make the logistics work is really the question. Yeah. Now, a company like a Hindustan Lever might have some right at some level to build a profitable logistics structure, because they might force you to buy a whole set of goods, right? But Britannia, which is selling 5 rupee biscuits, if it believes that, just a biscuit portfolio, they can go completely D2C, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be easy. Yeah. But aggregators, right? Aggregators like Dunzo, right? Like an e-commerce, like an Amazon, right? Who really build their supply chain and logistics by building profitability through a basket of goods, right? I think is where the DTC part comes alive, right? And I think DTC is a big business opportunity, but maybe not for the brands necessarily themselves, maybe a lot more for aggregators, right? When the put down price is say 1,500 or 2,000 or 3,000, right? I think that is where a DTC approach can really get going, right? In the US, there is a brand of razor blades which really disrupted the market, but it is because the razor blades market there had already reached a particular minimum put down size, right? In terms of how much are you willing to spend in each occasion, right? And I think that's really what a D2C has to be thought about for aggregators, for e-commerce, as well as for brands.
Yeah, I think this will help. We have another question uh, mentioned by concentration. He
Right.
wants to know how does the brand personality is the important for a brand. For example, we have Amitabh Bachchan has been a brand ambassador for many of the brands. So now,
Right.
how can a brand can get advantage with a brand personality?
Sure. So I think brand personality and the use of celebrity are two different questions, right? But let me address the role of celebrity, right? And I think it's always been a challenging question for brands to figure, right? That is the celebrity worth it, right? Why should they spend so much money on the celebrity? I remember when Cadbury Dairy Milk or Cadbury's used Amitabh Bachchan, right? It actually used Amitabh Bachchan for only 2 years, right? And it needed Amitabh Bachchan for the credibility of getting outside the infestation crisis of 2003. It continued using Amitabh Bachchan for further 2 years with Cadbury celebrations, right? But after 2 years, we were like, and this is way back in 2002, 2003, that as much of money as we are giving to Mr. Bachchan, and he has really come in for us in a big way, right, is as much of the money required to do two of our campaigns, right? And hence, we felt that and Amitabh Bachchan is not relevant for the brand any further, and hence you stopped using the celebrity, right? Now, a celebrity has to be used very carefully, right? A celebrity should not overwhelm the brand. I think the examples of using a celebrity poorly is when you only remember the celebrity and don't remember which brand it was. Yeah, because a celebrity can become very, very large. But a celebrity is useful when you are in a crisis and you need credibility, which is what Dairy Milk required. A celebrity is often required when it is a small brand which wants to speak of stature, right? If you have an epigamia coming into the market today and nobody knows what Greek yogurt is, and it's going to be a tough job of convincing people, right? You bring in a Deepika Padukone and people at least sit up and notice. And if a Deepika says, you know what, you want to live a lifestyle like mine, you want to make the choices I make, maybe consider epigamia, right? And that's where a celebrity comes in and plays a role. So I think we need to be very careful of how and why we use a celebrity. A celebrity should come from strategy and it should come from what the brand requires, right? Rather than just using them as an actor. And the watch outs of using a celebrity is a celebrity could overwhelm your brand and you might just remember the celebrity and not the brand. And that's what one should be careful about.
Sure, sir. Now, the other question is asked by Pankudi Agarwal. So she asks if
Mhm.
a brand is going into a growth strategy. So now, since it is a new brand relevance into the brand itself, in the category itself, how can they manage to cater to the demand for that product? Because there might be a sudden spike or there might be sudden help for the brand. So how can they manage the demand?
Right. So I think in the whole grow category piece, right? See, what are brands? Brands are fundamentally surrogates of a category, right? So when you have a new brand, it has got a chance to redefine itself as a new category, right? So like I said, a paperboard redefined the juice experience. It had just had lots of juice. And paperboard, if that category were to grow, could have been the starting point of a new category, right? Similarly, 2 Yum could do that. A Cash 22 can do that, right? Now, on the sudden spurt, right? How do you manage that, right? See, the whole task of growth category is done from each of the four P's. Yeah, the first P is product itself. So oftentimes, a lot of brands do the whole grow category task just by making a fantastic product, placing it on the shelf with limited distribution, and just deploying promoters to talk about it. Right? I think an epigamia has done that really well. I think the initial experiences of Greek yogurt or epigamia for many of us would have just seeing it on the shelf and wondering, yeah, what in heaven's name is it? It just looks something very different. And then there was a promoter standing out there who got you to sample it. And an epigamia moved one market at a time. So they just moved to the first few metros, then a few more metros. Then they used digital. They used digital targeting. They focused again on really increasing the geographical standpoint. Yeah. Another company which I think does this extremely well is Ferrero, right? Ferrero really believes in the opposite of what Cadbury does. Cadbury goes in with a nuclear bomb, which is an ad. Everybody knows it, puts it out there, and gets the spike, right? A Ferrero does the opposite. A Ferrero goes one outlet at a time, one street at a time, gets a minimum offtake in that outlet by just doing great point of buying advertising, right? Just by right merchandising, by just placing it in front. And hence it expands outlet by outlet, street by street, city by city, because they're going for very differentiated products, something which the consumer not experienced before. So I would say focusing on the product, focusing on distribution place, and then focusing on promotion is the way brands take on the grow category task, but then they do it in a phase-wise manner.
So I think the takeaway is I think we start with a pilot kind of thing. Basically, start from a
Yeah,
small base, growing that way. So
that's
we
right.
have, yeah. So you have other question. We were discussing about the positioning where we were attaching a new innovation product to a existing category.
Yeah.
So now, do we have to worry about cannibalizing our own brand? If, for example, we venture into, we already have Pub and we are venturing along with a Crispello, or we already have Gems and we are venturing along with the Pops. So, do we actually have to be concerned about the cannibalizing our own brand, or there is a different point of view of looking at this?
I think it's a very good question. Yeah, and this is where portfolio management comes in, right? And while these are often lines in the sand, but I think great leaders do the job very well of trying to be very clear as to what are the various need states out there. Are they having specific brands with specific need states? and ensuring that those brands are not sitting on are not sort of stepping on each other's toes. So whenever you have a Cadbury Dairy Milk shorts, you have a Jen's brand manager which is worried, saying that what is my business going to get substituted, right? And whenever you have a Crispello, you have a Perk brand manager worrying that oh God, I don't have the Dairy Milk equity, and will a Crispello cannibalize my sale? Yeah, and I think it is a very important question, and it is really critical from a marketeer standpoint, or at least from a marketing head standpoint, to be able to cut and slice and figuring it out. How are these brands really different? Is it the fact that a perk sells a lot more in smaller towns with smaller SECs, and hence am I sufficiently confident that I will get a lot more of the SEC A audience, and hence will Crispello fight a lot more with a Kit Kat versus my regular perk consumer? I think that's something which a marketeer has to be very careful of, confident of, should have done the number work before they put it in, right? And hence this task, this question has to be can only be done by putting pen to paper and figuring it out what's really the impact on the overall mix.
Sure, sir. So now Avinash Ghosh has asked a question: if in the grow category, if the Coke has launched a $5 product, so a brand can think of the returns in the category. So is it how we should see it as a return on investment?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. Yeah, and this is something which I often talk to me with my boss, of saying that I don't think that we should look at NSV. I don't think we should look at the total top line. I think we should look at profit pools. And for example, in the business that I currently work on, which is the dairy category, right? A ghee is almost 20-30% of my business volume, but brings in almost zero money because of the nature of the category, and hence we don't invest there much, right? And hence it is profit pools that we need to chase, right? And one can only look at a penetrative pricing if the quantum of the total business increase that we are going to get finally increases leads to a net profit increase. If the top line growth is enough to only justify the commensurate bottom line increase, only then those proposals get passed. And hence, if you launch a 5 rupees Coke, Coke turnover might go from say 10,000 crores to 20,000 crores. But if the bottom line falls from 1,000 crores to 800 crores, it's not a great strategy. But if the top line grows from a 10,000 crores to a 15,000 crores, right? But if my bottom line grows from 1,000 crores to 1,200 crores, it's still a good strategy. And that's really the working that one needs to do when they decide the metrics for success.
Sure. So it's a great answer, sir. So one of the question is, if there is an ideation for a new product into the market, so how does this ideation takes to build into the market, since it is a new product? So how much time does it a brand can expect to get flourish into the market?
So again, good question, and frankly, there is no clear answer. I mean, there are companies who have done innovations in 2 to 3 weeks. There are companies who take 8 months. There are companies who take 18 months, right? So I think there are fit for purpose, right? In my head, if you follow all the protocols of research, typically 8 months is a good time, right? That's about the time that I took when I launched Captain Morgan Dark Rum, or relaunched it rather. Right, I think 8 months is a good time, and why 8 months is because there are certain phases that you go through, and the phases are exactly the ones we talked about. You start with the strategic, what will the innovation really do for the brand, right? Goes on to segmentation of the market, leads to positioning, helps you deliver a concept card. Once you have the concept card, you go out there and do a concept product, whether the product that you set, you norms, ask the norms to be able to give you the business value, and you finally go out there and you do a go-to-market, right? Now, these are the broad steps. It can again depend on industry. Industries like chocolate, the capex backend is very expensive. It can take a longer time. Things like biscuit, the capex is much easier. It's far cheaper and easier to make biscuits. The timelines can be much shorter.
Sure. Now, I think this is a very good question asked by Aryan Agarwal. And now we have seen Amul into the dairy segment. We have realized Amul is attached to a dairy perception. Now, the news is that Amul is trying to introduce Atta category. So, how can they view this as a project, and how can consumers be able to adapt to Amul in the Atta form, the Atta product?
Can you just quickly repeat the question? You said Amul is a dairy product is launching.
Yeah, I'll repeat the question.
Sorry, is breaking.
There is a small technical glitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, we have seen Amul into the dairy category, dairy portfolio. But now Amul is trying to launch its Atta. So now still it is away from the dairy product. So how can the consumer be able to adapt to Amul in this case? How can you see this as a market for Amul or for consumers?
Okay. So, like I said, see, I don't know about the offer which Amul is coming with, right? Obviously, and Amul should not find it very easy because they don't have Atta equity. They obviously have dairy equity, right? And hence, I don't know how Amul will take it forward, right? Now, like I said, the task is very simple. You always have either a grow category task or a share task, right? And if an ITC decided to go the steel share way, right, they will look at the Atta product which Amul is launching, match the same product, similar value, similar proposition, and you try to block them, outshout them, and say that whatever new things that Amul is launching with, let me sort of talk about it, right? Or they can say that what Amul is going to remain a fringe player. Let me ensure that I focus on growing my category faster. If I can continue to get the category at least to grow at the rate at which I want to, I will get my incremental business. Sure, Amul might always remain a small fringe player, right? And believe you me, the way the P&L stack out in something like Atta, there is precious little money to be made. So if you don't have scale, managing the back end, front end, you'll leave a lot of players who will try their hand and then leave and exit, right? I mean, in Cadbury, we realize that there's a lot of competition which will keep coming into chocolates. After a while, go out. The same thing with dairy. I mean, only an Amul Britannia have sort of stuck around. A Fonterra has come 10 times, come gone out. Danone has come multiple times, come gone out. Because if you are not already with scale, you often have to burn too much of cash to make any kind of a dent in the market. And hence, if I was ITC, I wouldn't really be too worried about Amul in the first place.
Yeah. So Harshit has asked a question: how can we differentiate the marketing strategy when there are same kind of products made by the different companies, like nice biscuits which are made by Britannia or any other brand as well? So how can we differentiate the marketing strategies in the same kind of product with different
Yeah.
companies?
So like I said, for me the most exciting example of same products, completely different strategies, right, was in alcohol. And believe you me, almost all of alcohol is just ethanol, C2H5OH. That's all it is, right? And if you used a psychographic segmentation or you focused on emotional benefits, right, you can really differentiate the most commoditized of categories, right? Soaps are example of that, right? All soaps are the same, 99% same recipe, same everything, right? A little bit of color, slight different fragrance, you have a completely different positioning, a completely different benefit, and a completely different strategy.
Yes, sir. So I think we have many more questions. So I think the students can take up individually with you while connecting.
Sure. That's all right. I mean, anyway, I'm there on LinkedIn. You guys can post me, you can mail me as well. And I'm happy to share my email address is bajajsaurabh1@gmail.com. I'm also happy to take on some questions individually as well. I may not be able to reply to all of them immediately, but yeah, over time, I surely can.
Sure, sir. Sure. So I think we can take an end to this session, and I would like to briefly summarize the key highlights for this session, which will be helpful for the students. So the first thing
Sure.
which we talked about is what is the brand task, whether a brand has to grow a category, or whether the brand has to steal a category. So now if a brand goes into a grow category, he can build a relevance, and if it goes to the steal category, he can do a differentiated benefit to the consumers. And the second thing is understanding the consumers. So we can use STP analysis to do this, and we can make a consumer portrait to get a help of getting the consumer insights. Following that, we have understood about positioning. We can make a 2x2 grid, and we can use many variables for like a category-based variable, a consumer-based variable. Also, you have also talked about the prestige variable, which have already worked on in DIGO. And and the last is creating a brand ladder. So we want to ask to ourselves, why should the consumer should buy our product? If you can answer this question, I think we'll be able to jump into the brand ladder and create a brand for the consumers for a sustainable business. And the last point which I've talked about is the components of the marketing plan. So you have talked about the 4 components. The first is the advertising. The second is the consumer engagement. Third is shopping, and the fourth is innovations. So this is the bits. These are 4 bits. I think the marketer, and if we go into the industry, we should take into consideration while creating the marketing plan.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
And there were many more points you have shared while answering the questions. So these were points which were very helpful to us. And as we are young and will be jumping into the industry, so this was a very informative session which you have shared with us. And thank you so much for creating this wonderful deck and giving this a very insightful session. Yes, thank you so much for giving your time.
Sure, guys. All the best for all your careers. I also enjoyed the session quite a bit. Yeah, and there are a lot of other areas that we can, also talk about in the future. So happy to stay connected with all of you guys. All the best.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for joining.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.